So yeah, let's get started. So we've got the War of the Bucket by OverSimplified, which should be a lot of fun. I don't know too much about this. I believe it takes place in the Middle Ages. I don't even know really who's involved in it. And I don't think the bucket was even that important from what I was told about it. Besides that, I don't really have a whole lot. I think the thumbnail has the Pope in it, which is always fun whenever we get to talk about popes during the Middle Ages, because they had, like, no integrity. They were just another big political figure, just among political figures. They just happened to be heads of an ideology rather than a physical place, though they also had a physical place as well. But like the more important thing was like they were the head of like a whole ideology that spanned different countries and all sorts of stuff and could influence great leaders and all sorts of stuff like that. And it's so fascinating. So everything is looking good, sounding good. Let's get this one started. If you guys have any fun facts or whatever, just, you know, let me know. Because I'm down with it. I got a lot of fun facts from the chat last week while watching OverSimplified, so that helps. I like being able to ask questions to you guys. There's a lot I don't know. All right, let's do it. Oh, sorry. The mouse didn't work. There we go.
Hey,
I was on the wrong tab.
Yeah, you. New merch available now, including a supremely uncool t-shirt and a glorious new character pin. Link in the description down below. Alright folks, gather round. I've got some good news and some bad news. Did you say good news and glad news? No, I said good news and bad news. Very bad news. Word on the street is there's going to be a horrible plague coming in from Central Asia in the next couple decades that'll wipe out half of Europe. What's the good news? Do you have a cure? Please say you have a cure. No. Even better. The good news is, we've got a new bucket for this city well.
I mean, if you're talking about a plague, maybe getting a new bucket every once in a while would be good for sanitation. It's not going to help with that plague, but in general, getting a new bucket could be very helpful. Airplane going overhead, very fun, always happens when I'm recording or live. I guess I shouldn't be too upset because airplanes happen. Fun fact, the Holy Roman Empire was a mess. Oh, you think? I guess every empire's been a mess at some point or another. Stop it. Stop it. All right, let's continue.
To understand the War of the Bucket, we first need to talk about this guy. He's the man with the plan, the host with the most. He's holy, lowly, he eats ravioli, with the white cassock, matching pellegrina, and the most tasteful of fringed fascias. Come on, y'all know who I'm talking about. It's the Pope, the head of the largest religious organization in the world. But what if I told you he wasn't always the big bad boy powerhouse he's often thought as today? That's right. Throughout history, the papacy often found itself forced to wrestle against adversity and opposition to retain its authority. The earliest popes, for example, suffered under the brutal persecution of the Roman Empire, and many ended up martyred, such as Pope Clement I, who was ostensibly thrown into the sea with an anchor around his neck. On the bright side, however, he's now the patron.
OverSimplified does a lot of, well, I'm not going to say a lot because they only have like a handful of videos in total, but they every once in a while do some on like individual figures rather than events. Like they had the King Henry VIII one that happened not too long ago in like the grand scheme of those videos. Here. Do you gotta poop? Is that why you're mad? We're gonna see if he has to poop. No? Okay. That's fine. Come here. You're gonna hang out here for... Okay, never mind. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, he does videos on like individuals every once in a while, like King Henry VIII. Like there's a million different popes that could probably have their own episode. The Pope in general is so filled with political nonsense, and some of it's like borderline ridiculous. So like I would love to see an episode that like focuses on the life of an individual pope. I've been calling for an episode on Andrew Jackson, but I'm willing to wait for Andrew Jackson if it means we can get one on a pope.
Saint, a fisherman. After persecution finally ended, the Pope still found himself being heavily controlled by secular kings and nobility. For over 2 centuries, the Byzantine emperor basically decided who could become Pope. Then came a real low point, during what has been called the Dark Age, a period where noblewomen controlled the Pope through, how should I put this, feminine charm. It was around here that one infamous Pope, John XII, took office. This bad boy would hold, how should I put this, naughty no-clothes parties in the Lateran Palace. And apparently, this would even happen. Come on, Zeus, give me a 6. Did I say Zeus? I meant Thor. Ra, the Egyptian sun god? Dang it, who is it we worship? Perhaps you should read this, Your Holiness.
Yeah, I don't remember which pope it was that got thrown out a window. But I heard about that in like a Salmonella video because he was like doing somebody's wife.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth? Wow, this is wild. Pope John XII eventually died exactly how he lived. Caught in the act by an
Irish it was this guy
who picked the Pope up and chucked him out the window. The point I'm trying to make...
Okay, it was that one. I forgot which pope it was. I'm glad I brought that up like right before it happened. Wonderful.
Here is that often the Pope was a very weak and corruptible figure and was regularly used and controlled by secular leaders as a tool to increase their own power and influence. And there was certainly an element of that in the year 800, when the Pope and the Kingdom of the Franks were good BFFs, and King of the Franks, Charlemagne, was like, hey man, being King of the Franks is nice and all, but I want more legitimacy, and also to become the continuation of the Roman Empire. So what say in return for my protection, you crown me Emperor so everyone will respect me more? Sure thing, pal. We'll hold the ceremony tomorrow. Charlemagne, King of the Franks, I hereby crown you Emperor of the West. Oh my goodness. I was not expecting this at all. What a surprise. I simply cannot accept. Oh. Okay then, I guess I'll just put this back over here. Give me that crown! Charlemagne's crowning as emperor
that is a famous painting. Like among anything. I think there's more than one version. Of course, like an event like this has probably been painted more than once. I think there's another one that I'm personally more familiar with, but like this image is so famous and like it totally gets it makes me think of the Napoleon crowning and like how that moment kind of contrasts so hard with how Charlemagne's kind of deals with a very similar situation. It kind of shows a sort of I guess changing of eras when you see it happen with Napoleon, and he does not really show the same amount of like deference to the Pope. I guess the Pope does the legitimacy of the Pope, or I guess the integrity of the Pope, it has peaks and valleys. I don't know who the Pope was at the time of Napoleon. I don't know how big of a decision that was, but it's a very famous moment in hindsight.
Certainly an historic moment, but it also created a bit of an interesting problem. It set the precedent that from here on out, only the Pope could crown an emperor, but the Pope was also very much under the influence and control of Charlemagne. So who really held the power here, the Pope or the emperor? I'm sure that this conflict won't cause anyone to die. Bishop of Freising,
course it will.
We want to thank you once again for visiting our wonderful city. It's been an honor. The pleasure is all mine, and what a wonderful tour it's been. I've seen the city walls, I've seen the towers, nothing could top that. Oh, couldn't it? Because we've saved the best for last. Ta-da! Yes, that's very interesting. Isn't it the greatest thing you've ever seen? Well, I mean, it is just a bucket.
Very nice bucket.
Get him out of here! Over time, Charlemagne's position...
So, like, sometimes with Oversimplified, I don't understand what is a joke and what's not. Clearly, this one's a joke, and they didn't have, like, crazy reverence? If I say reference, I sound silly. Reverence for the for this bucket. I could understand the value in having a new bucket for a town, well, but I don't understand how it could possibly be all that important, like in the larger scale of things.
As emperor and the kingdom of the Franks gradually evolved into the Holy Roman Empire. And by now, the Pope and the Emperor weren't such good friends anymore, since neither could agree on who was the boss of who. To make matters worse, the Emperor had taken to investing his own bishops and abbots. What does that mean? Well, allow me to explain. The problem for the Holy Roman Emperor was his empire wasn't really an empire, so much as a nightmarish federation made up of hundreds of counties, duchies, bishoprics, and more. The princes in charge of these local regions often didn't give the emperor their loyalty. The German nobility spent a lot of their time rebelling against the emperor, and the emperor spent a lot of his time trying to put down those rebellions. Can we get rid of them? Who? All the nobility. Get rid of them and pick new ones who are loyal to me. You can't just remove noble families from their territory. Please?
I mean,
Aw, okay. How
kind of
about
can.
this? Some of those territories are ruled by bishops and abbots, and as Holy Roman Emperor, considered by many to be the deputy of Jesus Christ himself, perhaps you can choose who gets to become bishop and abbot.
Yeah, with that, like, I guess one could try to, like, forcibly remove the nobility and, like, just completely upend the system, but it would be a little bit riskier. This is kind of like a long-term game they're going for here. Because if you're trying to get rid of the existing nobility, they still have a lot of power and resources, and if you can't actually follow through on that, and they decide, no, I'm not going to leave, then you have a crisis of legitimacy. So this might be a way to like force your influence in and kind of create an infrastructure that can hold you up before you end up making like any sort of bigger decision. Because like if you make that decision and then you can't actually follow through on it, what is the king anymore? Everybody has seen that your word means nothing.
Yay! Now it's time to turn out the lights and go to sleep. Okay, I love you. Okay, good night. Say it back. And so it was. The emperor invested his own family and loyal followers into powerful church positions, and thereby was able to increase his own power and authority. Not only that, but the emperor and other nobility were also engaging in something called simony. That's when someone would come along and say, hey, I want to become a bishop and get all the personal riches that come with the position. Perhaps we could come to some kind of arrangement. That's right. Church positions were actually being sold to the highest bidder. And let me tell you, they probably didn't come cheap. It's going to cost you a lot more than this.
I mean, selling positions, this is not something unique to the Holy Roman Empire. This tends to happen during times of desperation a lot of the time. The Spanish Empire, like, it expands across the world and it becomes like this great power or whatever, but eventually they start to decline and a lot of positions end up just flat out being sold. And if you can buy a position, it does not necessarily mean that you're qualified to actually perform the duties of said position. But I'm pretty sure the British Empire has also had similar issues during certain periods. So like this is not at all weird, but when I've read about it, it's been during times of struggle. So there seems to be like a stability problem here, but I don't know how severe it is from what OverSimplified has said so far. The Holy Roman Empire is hard for me to follow personally. I've taken like 2 classes that kind of cover it, and I don't think there's just ever enough time for me to understand it. I'm a bit slow on the uptake. I need a lot of time to end up learning simple things, and this is a bit much for me. But I'm trying to keep up with it.
I don't think so. I've got a promo code. And speaking of promo codes, do you like free money? I know I do. I really like it, and that's why I use Honey. Honey is a free browser extension that automatically finds the best promo codes whenever you shop online.
Oh yeah, why am I doing this? So his ads are wonderful, but I have taken to actually skipping the ads now if the video is on the older side, because I've been kind of lectured on why like the promo codes are pretty much pointless at this point because they're definitely expired. So I'm not gonna waste your time on that stuff anymore. People have asked me like, why do you watch the ads? It feels like it's the right thing to do, but then they explain to me rationally why it's pointless, and I'm like, yeah, it just feels weird to skip it because it seems like they put a lot of work into it. But let's get into like the main video. Oh yeah, Lightgiver says if you remove them, there would be no way to raise taxes or an army. Well, I'd assume you would like replace them with something. You would have to replace them, but the only problem is the people you replace them with would have to have that authority and that level of like either power or respect to raise taxes and assist in the raising the army. I'm not saying you just get rid of them and then rule things on yourself. You got to be a delegator if you're ruling a space that large. Overall, like, armchair leader is really difficult.
Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. Investing bishops and abbots, selling church positions, authority, and power. Wait a minute. This is depravity. The purpose of the church isn't for him to increase his own authority and power. It's for me to increase my own authority and power. What about Jesus, Your Holiness? What? I thought the purpose of the church was to spread the good message of Jesus Christ. How drunk are you? Very.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
All right. The results for the election of Chief Magistrate are in. Giovanni Kablami, 1%. Spaghetti Jeff, 2%. And the bucket, 1 trillion%. Around the year 1050, a series of reformist popes came along, and they said enough was enough. They wanted to stop the emperor from abusing the church and investing his own church officials. How are you going to stop me so long as I have control over who becomes pope? Remember the circular power division? If you try to stop me, I'll just depose you and pick someone else. Oh no, I've contracted tuberculosis. And just like that, the emperor was dead. His 6-year-old son, Henry IV, took over. And as we all know, child emperors equal opportunity. The church had an opening to take back control of the papacy. Hey man, I hope you don't mind, but we're changing the rules so that only the church cardinals can elect the pope, and you no longer have any say in the matter. You know, if that's cool with you. I peed my pants.
Of course.
Okay, great talk. Then, with the position of the Pope a little more secure, he held a big meeting where he drew up a big list of all the reforms and new powers he was giving himself. And it included some pretty gnarly stuff. Okay, first, I have the power to depose emperors. Everyone cool with that? Yeah? Let's see. Only I can depose or reinstate bishops. Yeah? Alright, no one can judge me. All princes shall only kiss my feet. Only my name shall be spoken in the churches. My name is the only name in the world. Okay, I think you're done.
Ooh.
These were all some pretty radical powers the Pope was giving himself.
Okay, hold on. He alone can depose and reinstate bishops. Okay. All princes shall kiss the feet. His name is the only... Okay, like, I can't actually read that, of course, but I'm just... Like, that's... I don't know what that means. I don't even know what that means, that his name is the only name in the world. I'm sure that has, like, significance in the time. Or maybe it's just the ravings of a narcissist. I've been using the word narcissist a lot, but we've been covering a lot of people who clearly are. So, I don't know. Yeah. Michael Hill, a toddler as king never ends well. I mean, a lot of child emperors end up getting like killed, right? I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but like that's a great time to assassinate a child. Like they're reliant on other people to protect them to a much greater degree and to protect their interests. He might be more useful as a child than dead, though, so I suppose you wouldn't want to do that in this context. But yeah, never ends well. So eventually they will grow up and they'll be like, what did you do? What did you do to all my power? I thought I was supposed to be powerful.
And with these reforms, the Pope was basically telling the Emperor, you no longer
have the right
to choose your own bishops and abbots. Only I can do that. When the Emperor, now a full-grown man, heard the news, He was furious. What? This is madness! Who does this guy think he is? I'm the emperor, for goodness sake. He can't tell me what to do. I'll invest my own bishops and abbots if I want to, and this rapscallion can go right to heck! I peed my pants again! The whole conflict escalated when Henry IV went to the Pope and said, "Hey, guess what, sucker? You're deposed." Oh. Wait a minute. I'm the Pope. You can't depose me. You're deposed. Oh. Wait a minute. I'm the Emperor. You can't depose me. You're deposed. Oh.
That just kept going.
Wait a minute. Eventually, the German princes took advantage of the situation, and they all turned against Henry. Henry was...
And that's kind of a crisis of legitimacy for both of them, in a way. Like, I'd say that the Pope is probably in a better position there. I think the Pope is kind of in a position that's, like, in a sense... I don't want to say universally respected, because that seems like a little too all-encompassing. But like the entrenched nature of his position and the holy justification of his position, he might be able to leverage that over the emperor more than the emperor can leverage that his power over the Pope. I am a little bit more concerned about the king in this position. I have no idea how this ends. But, yeah, we'll see.
Was forced to apologize to the Pope, and the whole thing ended there. Except it didn't. The whole conflict, known today as the investiture controversy, would continue on for centuries as popes and emperors engaged in a power struggle over the emperor choosing his own church officials. The overall result of this conflict is very intricate and full of complexities, but in general, the Pope was able to increase his authority. Great news, Your Holiness. Your influence is on the rise throughout civilized Europe. Except for this one city in northern Italy. Really? What's going on there?
William the Conqueror was a year older than the kid when he became Duke of Normandy. Worked out okay for Normandy. Yeah, that is a good point, Kevin. I would try pronouncing your last name, but I don't want to embarrass myself in front of all my friends. They might laugh at me. Pedro II did pretty well, so maybe there are some examples. I shouldn't assume that there aren't examples just because I don't know about them, because there's probably so many examples that I don't know about. Yeah. Hello, MWPSBCID. I'm glad you caught up to the live feed. I'm glad you're joining us here. What the hell is going on?
As for the emperor, he found his realm thrown into
further history
and civil war as the local princes continued to increase their own power and independence. This was most notably the case in northern Italy. Separated from the rest of the Holy Roman Empire by the Alps, the emperor's influence and control over Italy had often been questionable. In the current chaos, these Italian city-states began operating almost entirely independently. Their practical independence was further solidified when Emperor Frederick Barbarossa came down in 1176 to try to reassert his control. The cities formed an alliance, and with the Pope's support, they kicked the emperor
That looks like a familiar symbol right there.
Hooray!
I'm sorry, somebody just got home and now he's very excited. I'm gonna give him a second. Rest in peace to the headphone users. I'm glad you joined us. It's just... Oh, are you good? You good? Yeah, that black bird. I'm trying to think of where I saw that specifically. I feel like I saw it in like a flag review thing, but it might just be something like in the similar style, because those little crest things, a lot of them are just in that style. I might have seen one in the same style and color scheme, and maybe that's where I've seen it before, but it looks familiar. And that would have been a modern flag I would have seen that on during my flag review series. Yeah, child monarchs doing well are the exception for sure. They do well despite being children, yeah.
Formed an alliance, and with the Pope's support, they kicked the emperor right back to Germany. Hooray, said the Italian city-states. We did it. We're the best of friends. And then they immediately began attacking each other. Why? Well, this whole Pope versus Emperor thing, in Italy at least, had infiltrated society to its very core. Across Italy, families and cities were torn between two opposing sides. On one side, the Guelphs, who supported the Pope's cause. On the other, the Ghibellines, who supported the emperor. These two sides struggled for control as Guelph cities battled against Ghibelline ones. As usual, personal interest played a pretty big role, as pro-Pope Guelph cities tended to be rich mercantile ones who didn't like the emperor's taxes. Emperors supporting Ghibellines, on the other hand, were often agricultural, where the expanding papal states were a larger threat. These cities would sometimes even switch sides depending who is in charge and their ever-changing personal interests. In some cities, brutal fighting broke out in the streets.
I mean, who needs loyalty?
For...
I mean, who's helping you lately? Let's be real. When it comes to people who are like more like on, I like that we got the plague doctor in the background. I think that's the first time we've seen a plague doctor in oversimplified style. It's really cool. Sorry, that stood out to me. Have you noticed that I have ADHD? That's how it looks. I was talking about one thing. I mean, if you're like ordinary people, yeah, who's helping you lately? Am I right?
For control. At times,
Romeo and
the conflict
Juliet
became
origin
so
story,
tribal
maybe.
that the differences between the two sides were just downright silly. My love, I can't bear it. We must be together. But how can we? My Ghibelline family wears feathers on the left side of their caps, and your Guelph family wears them on the right. My Ghibelline family cuts fruit straight down, and your Guelph family cuts fruit crosswise. These are arbitrary differences. We shouldn't let them tear us apart. We can be together no matter what our families think. Wonderful news. Let's make a toast to our love. I'll drink from my Ghibelline smooth goblet, and I shall drink from my Guelph chaste goblet. Get out of my sight, you dirty Pope-loving wench. Two city-states in particular that got caught in a long-standing rivalry was the Emperor supporting Modena and the Pope supporting bucket-loving Bologna. These two...
Finally! Oh, okay, we are like 2/3 into this video, and we still hadn't... We are actually 2/3 into this video, and we hadn't actually seen any of this come into play. I think this is just an excuse to talk about the bucket, and then talked about the bigger political problems around it just so we could include the bucket. It feels like such a... I'm sure it blows up or whatever, but it feels like such a small conflict compared... You know what I said. It feels like such a small conflict compared to everything else that's going on.
Cities had bad blood between them, as they had already fought against each other on a number of occasions. In 1249, the two sides took part in the Battle of Fasolta, after which the victorious Bolognese launched a live donkey into Modena
so much
to
backstory.
humiliate them. For decades after that, the two sides would occasionally take little day trips into each other's territory and mess things about a bit. In the fateful year of 1325, the Bolognese went on one such trip and laid waste to some farmlands. The ruler of Modena, Passerino de Bonacolsi, was having none of it. The Bolognese had two major forts protecting their city in the southwest, so Passerino, in retaliation, decided to take an army down and lay siege to one of them. Hey, you dirty Bolognese jerks! You think you can raid our farmlands? Come out here and face me like a man! Hey man, what's up? I've just come out to let you know that there's no need to siege us because... Whoa, hey man, chill out. I'm trying to tell you... Whoa, stop doing that. I'm trying to tell you I'm actually secretly sympathetic to the Imperial cause and I want to willingly hand the fort over to you. Oh, cool. Okay.
Coward!
Dude, what was that for? For betraying your people. And this is for joining mine. Mwah. The ball...
I mean, there's something there. Like, if you're, you shouldn't trust somebody who's willing to turn on their people for you. Because, like, what's it gonna take for them to turn on you for somebody else? So, like, there's some legitimate concern there. I don't think that guy's, like, an actual recurring character, but we'll see.
Colonies were pretty unhappy to lose one of their main defensive forts. But to make matters worse, then this happened. Hey, wait a minute. Where's the bucket? Oh no, it's gone.
Chill out
Those
eventually.
Modenese must have taken it. We'll make them pay. This is unacceptable. They may take our lives. They may take our fort, but they will never take our bucket. Oh wait, here it is. I found it, guys. It's right here. Phew. Could you imagine if we started a war over that? That would have been really stupid, and there'd probably be a billion videos about it on YouTube one day. Thank goodness it never actually happened. That's right. The famous story you may know about the War of the Bucket, that the war started because Modena stole Bologna's bucket, doesn't actually seem to be quite right. I was surprised to find that the bucket was likely not actually stolen at the start of the war. And at this point, I want to thank and give a big shout out to fellow history YouTuber M Laser. He's the one guy I found who actually...
I love M. I haven't watched much of his actual stuff, but I know M Laser, and I follow him on Twitter. He's actually really insightful, and I think he's just very good in general. I don't think he covers anything that really I do or anything that I study in particular, but I enjoy hearing what he says. I think I follow him on Twitter. Either that or all the people I follow him on Twitter, and he gets retweeted a bunch into my feed, which that's also equally possible. But yeah, he's actually really good.
Translated a fantastic original Italian source, and then kindly allowed me to use his work in my own research. He does really well researched and in-depth videos, and definitely deserves way more subscribers, so please head on over and check him out.
I think he has way more now.
The real reason Bologna seems to have declared war on Modena is simply that they both hated each other, supported opposing factions, the Pope had called on Guelph cities to attack Passerino, and Bologna wanted its fort back. And they were gonna get it back. Bologna had a large force, much larger than what Modena could muster up, so they felt pretty confident. They sent half their force to lay siege and take back the fort, and the other half took defensive positions to prevent the Modenese from crossing the river. The smaller Modenese force were struggling to find a place to cross, so one night they were like, "Hey guys, look out, we're attacking way up here in the north, better move your troops." Oh, would you look at that? That was easy. And just like that, the Modenese were across the river. The Bolognese were probably expecting the Modenese to come and break their siege, but instead, the Modenese went for the second fort at Zappolino. Bologna couldn't afford to lose both of its defensive forts, so the entire Bolognese force moved to take defensive positions at Zappolino. When the Modenese arrived, it was already late in the day, and there were about 2 hours of sunlight left. In most medieval battles, at this point, both sides would set up a camp, rest for the night, and prepare for battle the next day. But the
Hello, Leftist Lead. It's good to have you. Hello, comrade. I always get that as like a pretty common greeting online. I got it more when I had a bigger beard. Just people see the beard and they're like, "Oh, comrade."
The outnumbered Modenese decided the only way to win was to deal a quick, decisive blow while the Bolognese were still unorganized and unprepared. And that's exactly what they did. They charged at the Bolognese line, and the two sides engaged in fierce combat. Then the sneaky Modenese pulled what must be the most predictable, yet somehow consistently surprising move in medieval warfare. They sent the cavalry around the side and hit him from behind. Bing bang bong. The Bolognese went on the run. With casualties in the thousands, Modena had won, and the Modenese cavalry chased the Bolognese cavalry all the way back to the city. After Modena's victory, they went on a tour of the Bolognese countryside, burning some stuff down along the way. When they reached the city itself, instead of laying siege,
yeah, I'm sorry about the bird, guys. He goes through these fits every once in a while. You guys see him most of the time when he's really well behaved, but this is gonna kind of be a product of every week's live stream, at least during one segment. Like he goes through this, then he eventually calms down and is like chill for like the rest of the day, but like he has to go through kind of a screaming fit every once in a while. This is why I always tell people, don't get a bird, you're not actually ready for it. Hold on just for un segundo. I need to just give him a second of attention. Hey, dude, hey, shut up. Let me help you out. Here you go. We're gonna hang out right here. We're gonna have you chilling out just a little bit. There. Is that better? Is that better? Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I think I think that's a little better. Sometimes he likes it better if I open the door or something so he can see out there. There's also a cat in this house that I have to be a little worried about, so we're going to see what we can do. He seems like he's chilled out ever so slightly. So let's continue. I'm going to go back like a minute because I feel like I missed a lot of that, and I'm really sorry. I'm doing my best.
Entire Bolognese force moved to take defensive positions at Zappolino. When the Modenese arrived, it was already late in the day, and there were about 2 hours of sunlight left. In most medieval battles, at this point, both sides would set up a camp, rest for the night, and prepare for battle the next day. But the outnumbered Modenese decided the only way to win was to deal a quick, decisive blow while the Bolognese were still unorganized and unprepared. And that's exactly what they did. They charged at the Bolognese line, and the two sides engaged in fierce combat. Then the sneaky Modenese Bolognese pulled what must be the most predictable, yet somehow consistently surprising move in medieval warfare. They sent the cavalry around the side and hit them from behind. Bing bang bong, the Bolognese went on the run. With casualties in the thousands, Modena had won, and the Modenese cavalry chased the Bolognese cavalry all the way back to the city. After Modena's victory, they went on a tour of the Bolognese countryside, burning some stuff down along the way. When they reached the city itself, instead of laying siege, they set up a camp and basically held a massive party for 3 days. The defeated Bolognese could only sit back and watch. As the Modenese force began packing up and getting ready to leave, they noticed something. Oh my gosh. Hey, check this out. No way. Are you kidding me?
Oh, geez.
They're still using traditional wells. Hey, you dumb Bolognese. Ever heard of an artesian well? You can't even get water out of the ground without using a stupid bucket. It's not a stupid bucket. It's a wonderful bucket. Yeah, whatever, bucket boy. We're taking this.
Oh, so they
with
did
us.
take it. So the point of this is that they took it, but it wasn't before the war, and the war wasn't actually over the bucket, but the bucket did get taken. I wouldn't have known that it was that this was like an out-of-date bit of technology for the time, so I'm glad that they pointed that out, because I wouldn't have understood why it was such a novelty. It just seems natural. Oh, bucket, well.
So Modena stole
guy.
Bologna's bucket and put it up on display in their cathedral, eventually moving it to the city hall, where it remains on display to this day.
Oh, shoot.
The two cities came to a peace settlement a few months later. Bologna would have to pay heavy war reparations, and in exchange, Modena would return all conquered territories. Modena kept the bucket. Despite being one of the bloodiest battles in medieval Italian history, it didn't really change anything, except now Modena had Bologna's bucket. As for the larger power struggle between the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, that would continue on for some time and played a part in many major events of medieval history, such as the Crusades, the Protestant Reformation, eventually leading to the general separation of church and state we see in Europe today. So there.
Yeah, despite this not having much to do with the bucket, it really does lay a lot of foundation for stuff that I do actually cover a whole lot. So there is something very useful about this story. At least the bigger world, the stuff that was going on, like at the top level. I always end up having to reference my I always end up having to reference material on like Protestants versus Catholics, like the many different conflicts that led to people going to the New World. For those of whom the religious freedom thing was like the push factor to get them to the New World. There were a lot of other reasons, but when it does come down to like the religious debate, it's very interesting to reference some of the older material, because this is generations and generations of stuff. But this is like much older than most of the material I end up referencing. So this is cool. It's a nice little foundational piece.
There you have it. We learned about the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, the investiture controversy, and finally, the War of the Bucket. It's been a long day, and it's time to turn out the lights and go to sleep. Okay, I love you.
You good?
Okay, good night. Say it back!
You always gotta say it back. Oh, that's cool that he got to reference M. Laser in this. M. Laser is one of those guys who does like real history videos. See, 113,000 subs. That's way more than. That's like not quite 10 times what he had when he was shown in this video, but it's a lot more. Hold on, let me just do the.